Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Sandra and this channel is all about personal finance, career advice, having a career in technology. And I've been kind of seeing this video trend going around where people critique their old resumes that they use to get their job or like their internship. So this is something that I kind of wanted to try if you guys are interested. And just a little bit of background, I am currently working in cybersecurity. I graduated college in 2019 with my bachelor's in information science and technology. And if you don't already know, that major is similar to computer science, but a little less low-level operating systems and more networking and security and like app development. So I feel like this kind of fit into the realm of career advice / like critiquing advice, but from my own perspective. So I'm kind of giving myself advice, and hopefully some of this information or advice can also ring true for you guys if you guys are looking for your first full-time jobs or pivoting into a new job or finding an internship. So I'm probably gonna take out some of the personal like PPI or PII, personal information, and maybe I'll just throw a screenshot somewhere up here, but I'm gonna go through each section at a time. And my resume is super basic, like I don't have all the colors, like it kind of just looks like this. Okay, so just starting off, in the very first part is the header. And I used to have my header as a font really big. Right now I believe this is a size 14 or a size 13 font for just my name. And I actually also used to have my personal address on here, but actually got advice from a recruiter when I was in my sophomore year of college who told me how easy it is for people to impersonate people and how can a company trust you with their personal information or private information, confidential information, when you're just willingly giving this information out to other companies or other people, because your resume, like it kind of gets spread around like candy on Halloween because you want it to get to as many people as possible. So you really want to limit the amount of personal information that you have on there to as little as necessary, especially because a recruiter really doesn't need to know your personal address. The most they need to know is probably your city and your state, but besides that, you don't need to actually put your address on there. So I took that off, and all I have in my header is my name, my email, and my phone number. Okay, so going down, so my resume is really split into 4 main sections, and those are education, technical skills, technical experience, and activities and interests. Because I'm in technology, I used to actually have a resume that was a little older where I didn't have the technical experience yet, and I had a section for relevant experience, and then I had experience, and then I had a section for technical experience. So depending on where you are in your career, like if you're a freshman in college or a sophomore in college, it's gonna be a little different because you may not have those internships or those technical experiences that you might have when you're like a junior, senior in college or working full-time already in your mid-early career. So just pointing that out there for now. And then going into my first actual section, which is education, that's really just where I put my college information, and I only have my bachelor's. So I just put my school, my degree, my major, as well as my graduation date, a certification in computer security and digital forensics that I got from college. This isn't a certification that is from a official institution, but it's actually a certification that my college offered, and I was able to take it without taking too many extra classes on top of my regular curriculum for my major. So that's why I decided to take that one. And this is actually a pretty big part of me getting my first actual role in cybersecurity. And then some other stuff that I have on here is my expected graduation date, as well as my GPA and Latin honors that I have. So my expected graduation date, it's probably a little less relevant now because I'm working full-time, and some of the stuff I actually could take off. So I actually used this resume in my senior year of college to get my full-time job for after college. This was actually from my fall semester of senior year, which was actually fall 2018, since I graduated spring 2019. Actually about 2 years old now, this resume, but yeah, this is actually the one that got my first full-time job, so that's kind of why I'm working off of it. And then if you go down a little bit, the third section that I have is my honors and awards. So I used to actually have a kind of like text dump of all of my relevant coursework, and I eventually took that out because this was actually recommended to me by one of my professors, as well as, well, she's kind of like a professor, kind of like a technical guidance counselor kind of for the College of Science and Technology for our school, and she usually recommends people put relevant coursework for underclassmen like freshmen and sophomores, just because they don't have too much on their resume to kind of work off of for technical roles or technical experiences. So I actually took that off around my junior year after I was able to fill up a little more information in my resume. And the awards and honor section is really optional. I really put it here because I had a little bit of more space, and originally there were only 2 or 3 awards words that I had, so it was a lot smaller. But now it also still wouldn't be too relevant for me full-time because if I'm like already working for 1 or 2 years in the field, I don't know how many of these companies would actually care about the awards or honors that I got in college like 2 or 3 years ago. So I really think that depending on like where you are in your career, you may be able to add that section or you may not. And I really think that's just another section to kind of make you seem a bit more professional or a bit more studious or academic if you're still in college or just graduated college. And then moving on to my technical skills, I have 3 sections down here. I know a lot of people who do this differently, especially people who are in tech, and depending on where you want to diverge into, like if you're only front end or you're full stack or you're doing back end stuff, if you're a data analyst, it's probably gonna look completely different. But I was really looking for software engineering and data science roles. I actually wasn't really looking for cybersecurity when I was graduating full-time or looking for a full-time job. So this is definitely something that is gonna be different for anyone. Even if you're in tech, like it's really broad. So just what I have in terms of sections is programming, web development, and tools. So I really think tools may be a little redundant here and I might not need it anymore, especially because the tools I use now are completely different from what I was using in college, since I was mostly looking for like SWE software development jobs. So yeah, just in terms of programming, I listed Java, C#, Python, SQL, Oracle. So I actually got that piece of advice from one of my mentors because he uses SQL. He actually told me about all the different types of SQL, just like SQL Lite or like Lite SQL, NoSQL, and there's just like a lot of different things that pertain to SQL, and it's actually really broad. Even though most people in your database classes in college or even in the workplace, you're most likely using Oracle SQL, which are like the simple select statements, and you probably know like the basics. But yeah, I got that piece of advice to kind of write down exactly what type of SQL on here so people know what they're looking for or they know exactly what I'm talking about. And then just in terms of programming languages, Java and C# are really similar. My first language was actually Python, but I learned Java next, and C# was a later language I learned in my junior year, but it's actually one of my favorite languages, and I really have the most experience with C#, so that's another reason why I put it up there like close to the front, even though I took my data structures and algorithms courses in Java. So yeah, that's kind of like minor difference, but if you're really talking about the backend and how it's written, the syntax is so similar. And then Python, I took an intro class, so I don't really have too much to say there. It's definitely not my strongest language, but it was also a language that I actually tutored for in my senior year of college. So I have some experience with it, but not like in-depth experience. So that's another reason why it's not the first language written. So if you're in tech, like definitely put your preferred language first, and then the next ones that you're comfortable with, and then less and less. Okay, so web development, this could be the same as programming. It's really up to you guys how you laid it out. But in my case, I actually wanted like more sections, and technical skills looks really small with just 2 bullet points. But I can definitely change this now because I really feel like the layout of this is a little different from what I want it to be. And I also know a lot of people who just list it out in like bullet point format where it's just 6 different like technical languages under technical skills. So yeah, it's really up to you how you want to do it. And then the tools section is just whatever technical tools I use. I mostly put in IDEs here. Studio 3T is just a interface for MongoDB, and I also put MongoDB here since it's not really like a language, but more like a NoSQL database or tool that you can use. So I didn't put that as like a programming language, and it doesn't fit under web development, so that's kind of where it ended up. Okay, so that actually went through about half of my resume, and this third section, which is my technical experience, is actually the biggest chunk of my resume, and it takes up more than half the page. Oh, another thing is this used to be actually a lot bigger because I actually have like just a lot of wording. I'm currently using like size 10 font for the actual paragraphs, and then I'm using size 11 font for the bigger headers, and then my sides, like the page widths of my resume are actually, I believe, 0.5. So they're not like they're not a whole inch, they're about half an inch. And then I believe the bottom headers are about 0.75. So I was really picky about how I wanted to fit things without it looking like it was taking up too much stuff and without making people feel overwhelmed when they're just looking at all the text on my resume. So I really try to space it out where, yes, there's a lot of words and yes, there's a lot of information, but there's also a lot of spaces and page breaks where it feels necessary. So yeah, that's another reason why my technical experience has a lot of spacing in between each one, so it feels like separate chapters or paragraphs. And then in between each main section, like education and technical skills, I really left spacing at the bottom to make sure people knew where the sections are beginning. And really, I feel like just a lot of the stuff on here I really don't even need anymore. Like under education, I don't really need awards and honors anymore. And then for technical skills, I could have broken it down a lot better, especially since the tools aren't really that relevant, and web development and programming could be seen as kind of similar. Maybe I could have done front end and back end instead. And I really don't know if HTML, CSS is really too relevant to put on a resume, especially because it's not really that like technical. Like if I knew JavaScript, it'd be a little different, but HTML and CSS are a little basic, but I still think that it's a good skill to have, but I just don't know if it's as relevant as like JavaScript. And then for React, I'm not super comfortable with it, but it's definitely something that I used in a past internship, and that's another reason why I put that there. But I really feel like I wouldn't put a language on a resume where you don't feel comfortable interviewing in, because I've walked into a lot of interviews where people see something on your resume and maybe they're familiar with it and you're like, oh, Angular. So like how much have you used it? Like would you be comfortable interviewing in Angular or like doing something in Angular? And if it's just something that I've used like once for a project, then I don't really know how to answer his questions. Then it kind of makes me feel like super beginner, and it might rub him off the wrong way or rub her off the wrong way depending on how the interview goes. So yeah, I really feel like if you're going into a more technical role and you have a few languages on there that you're not 100% about, then maybe consider taking them off if you're not too comfortable answering questions about them on a potential technical interview. So that's one piece of advice for you guys, because I've been there and it's not the funnest. If you kind of get caught blindsided by a question and you study for like your main language and didn't really look into React or Angular, but it's on your resume, and then they ask you what your experience was and like some questions about it, like basics or even fundamentals or even in-depth questions, because it's really a fair game if it's on your resume. So okay, so going into technical experience, before I was a senior in college, I had a bunch of non-technical roles that I had on here. So don't think that you need to have just technical roles, because I used to have like Old Navy sales associate on here, cashier for like this ice cream shop that I used to work at. I used to work at the Philadelphia Flower Show, and I put that on there because I was like kind of like a sales associate, like selling flowers in one of the stands there. So yeah, my resume has definitely never looked this technical like all throughout college. It was not until my senior year that I had this. So just putting that out there in case you guys feel like it's just all technical. This took me a long time to really build up, and yeah, just being open to all experiences and all opportunities that come your way in college or even after college is really important. So just looking at this in a glance, I have five experiences, 5 technical experiences on here. And yeah, like once you start getting technical experience, that's when I started getting rid of my relevant experience, which is just like my sales associate roles and a bunch of non-technical roles. So I slowly weeded them out after time. So this definitely didn't happen overnight, and I just got rid of them one by one until they were all gone, and then I replaced them with the technical ones. But if I didn't have any technical ones to replace them with, then I left them on the resume, because there's still like things I could reach back on or talk to during like a behavioral interview, or if someone asks me questions about my work experience. So just looking at this, it starts like a chronological order. So my most recent one at the time is actually at the top, and then this is based on start date. And this can be based on start date or end date, really based on your preference. At the time, I had my most recent experience as a software engineering intern at JPMorgan Chase. So that was why I put that at the top, because I felt like it was the most relevant, especially when I was going to conferences and going to career fairs and like interviews when I was still in my senior year of college. So that was kind of the reason why I put that first, even though that internship ended August 2018 and my teaching assistant roles were still like present in that second row. Relevance trumps chronological order. So sure, like keep it as chronological as possible, but if you have a really relevant piece of experience, like if you intern at Google or Facebook, you should keep that at the top because it's the most relevant. And there's a statistic where recruiters only look at your resume for like 3 seconds and then they decide whether or not they want to talk to you or not. So it's literally that split-second decision where do they want to talk to you, yes or no? And there's a yes pile, there's a no pile, and there's a maybe pile. And if you're not a yes, then you really don't have your foot in the door. So you really want that first experience to be that knockout, like wow, like that's cool, or I want to talk to this person and learn more about their experience. So you want that first one to be impressive and kind of like the main point of your resume, that kind of like shining star on your resume that is going to make people want to talk to you, and then the rest kind of follow it up. So what I really have on here for each experience is the company, the role, how long I was there, and then the location. Location I didn't always have on there because I was only working in Philadelphia, but since my internship was in Delaware, Wilmington, I actually put that on there because it was a different location, and I felt like it kind of made sense to fit it on there, and it didn't look too wordy when I put it on there. So I think for now it's still okay, but especially when you're older and like working full-time, since location is a much bigger factor when you're an adult and you might not consider relocating as much as when you're a student, I think putting location on there is still relevant. So I would probably keep most of this the same just in terms of the structure, but I also haven't looked at resumes in a long time, so yeah. Maybe I should get a second look at this like once I actually start editing my resume again. And you should always try to keep your resume updated. For my current role, I do have a semi-updated resume. I haven't updated it in the recent months, but I think just keeping it relevant and updated is important because after like a year or two, like you don't even know what you were working on. If you're in a rotation program or if you switch teams, it's kind of hard to like pick back in your brain like, what was my main focus? So yeah, I really think like every 6 months or so, or like if you're looking for a job, like every month or so, like I think it's important to kind of think about what's on your resume and kind of take a look at what you can add or what you can change or delete. I'm not going to bore you guys with all of these details, but just make sure that all of your past experiences have words in past tense, and make sure the first word in each paragraph is actionable. So for example, all of my first words in every single tab for every single experience: worked in an agile team to develop blah blah blah, installed and configured Hadoop ecosystem blah blah blah, engaged students by teaching component-based software development blah blah blah, developed and assisted in planning course curriculum for blah blah blah, analyzed and solved various hardware and software malfunctions. So basically everything that I put on here is action item and then what I did. So make sure that the first word, you try to make it a verb where you actually did something, and try to make it focus on yourself rather than the team. Even if you worked on a team, say you worked on a team, but make sure you point out the things that you did, not the team did. And that's really it for my technical experience. I was a teaching assistant, I was a technician for a computer repair shop, I was a undergrad research assistant for a data science project at my school for one of the professors. And I really just started getting these technical roles more in my sophomore year and junior years, and then it really started to snowball in my senior year. But JP was definitely my first official paid internship where I was working for like a corporate job. So that was definitely a really good experience. Like the only thing that I would really change about this is also adding the fact that I was a peer tutor, where I was tutoring for the whole curriculum for my major for computer information systems, as well as the fact that I TA'd for 4 courses rather than just that one C# course that I put on my resume, just because it fit a little better, and I felt like just cluttering my resume with a bunch of the courses that I TA'd for wasn't as relevant. So that's another reason why I kept it off. But I think if you're a student right now and you're TAing like 4 courses, then you should put on your resume, because you never know when you're going to get a relevant interview question for that specific course. And if it's not on your resume and you're just bringing it up randomly in a behavioral question, it's kind of like, oh, I didn't know you did that, it's not on your resume. And you're like, oh, that's because I didn't add it. You know, it's kind of weird. So yeah, like definitely try to add it on there. That never actually came up for me. So if it did, like it would be a little weird if I'm just like saying that it happened. But like, I don't think they wouldn't believe me, but I just think like it could have been more of my own due diligence to put it on there for them to see. Especially because a lot of times interviewers look at your resume before going to an interview with you, so they kind of know your background already, and if you kind of like catch them off guard, then like you never know how that's going to rub off on them. So yeah, I just recommend putting everything that's relevant on your resume. Okay, so my last section is activities and interests, and first I have 3 bullets here again. Obviously 3 is like my lucky number. And oh yeah, for my technical experience, I put 2 bullet points for each experience. I try to keep it 2 to 3. I used to have more, but I kind of cut it down, especially when I added more experience on here, because I didn't want it to be like 3 bullet points for one thing. And if it was a really big experience like JP, I just put like an extra sentence under the same bullet point. So I try to keep it to 2 to 3 bullet points, because once you have 3 bullet points, it kind of feels like you're doing a lot, and what's your main goal here? Like, what did you really focus on during these 10 weeks, or like during your internship or during your undergrad research? I really think keeping it to 2 bullet points, at most 3, is probably like the best ratio, especially if you have like multiple different experiences. But if you only have like 2 or 3 experiences, then definitely add a little bit more. Okay, so for activities and interests, I have my conferences, which is Grace Hopper, my all-time favorite conference in the world, and I'm actually going there for the 4th year this year, and it is virtual, so I'm really excited. And yeah, like that's it. So I just have that on there, and then I also have hackathons I've been to, and like these could be hackathons that you attended but didn't actually like submit a hack. But a lot of these, the ones that I put in on here, I actually did submit a hack, but it's really up to you. Like you can go there for learning, you can go there for the sessions, you can even go there for interviews for jobs. So I really think anything that you do at a hackathon, just put on your resume and you can talk about the experience. Even if you didn't actually submit a hack, you still learned something and you still networked and you still met people. So like, yeah, I think it's really valid to put that on there. And then extracurricular is my student leadership roles. I really recommend getting into student leadership, and this was probably one of the highlights of my college career. I really like getting involved, more so in like my junior, senior years, even my sophomore years, but my freshman year I was like completely really shy and introverted. I still am kind of introverted, but I think that putting myself out there and just meeting people, it actually makes college a lot funner. And you know, if you're gonna like have some fun in college anyway, then you should make some friends and you should join some student orgs, because it's really just a really good way to get experience and get yourself out there, really get your foot in the door in networking and kind of figuring that out. And student orgs are really where I was able to take the most initiative in college, so I really recommend doing it. And yeah, the way that I laid it out is just the student org name and then the role that I had in parentheses and then comma. I could definitely have put this in a better, prettier looking way, especially since this is kind of looking like a word dump. But since it was at the end of my resume, it kind of didn't look wrong. So that's another reason why I didn't change that. But I definitely think that if I had a little bit more space, maybe like 1 or 2 extra lines, I would have actually put them out in like separate rows. And instead of calling extracurricular, maybe I could have called it leadership positions or student leadership, since all I really have on here is my leadership positions. Even though I was in other student orgs where I wasn't like in a e-board position, I didn't put that on here, so I definitely could have put that as a leadership section. And one last thing, in the footer I have a little section at the bottom, in the bottom right, that says US citizen. So this is another thing that my professor slash CS counselor, advisor, guidance counselor kind of talked to us about, because like I said in the beginning, your resume, your recruiter probably has just 2 to 3 seconds to look at your resume to decide yes, no, or maybe. And they're probably looking at thousands of resumes. If they miss yours, it doesn't matter. Like they probably won't care, and you're probably just gonna apply again next year. So I really think that getting your foot in the door right away and like not giving them like not giving them a chance to doubt or second think or second guess themselves is really important. And I know that this is actually really sad that we have to do something like this, but it's the fact that my last name is Asian, and you don't know if someone is gonna look at your resume and think, oh, well, are they a citizen? Are they gonna need a visa? Are they an international student? Our company doesn't offer international students internships, so it's a no for me. And you don't want to give them the chance to say that. And this actually feels so bad to say, but I really feel like it's important to say, because it's the truth, and you never know like who the recruiter is, what kind of background they're from, how diverse they grew up. Like you don't really know what their background is, and it's so hard to read into that. And the most that you can do is give yourself a fighting chance and really put on there, if you're a permanent resident, put it on there. If you're a US citizen, put it on there. Like I feel like just that is really important, because if you're born in the US and you have a unique name or you have a cultural name and a recruiter hasn't heard of that name before and they are second guessing and thinking, what if you're an international student, would it even be worth their time to reach out to you? Don't give them that option. Like just put on there if you're a US citizen or if you're permanent resident, so they have no chance to actually think of not calling you if they're already interested in you. So yeah, that's a piece of advice that I got from a professor, and I keep it on my resume to this day. It really sucks to say something like this, but I really feel like it's important, because I want you to get your foot in the door, and you don't want that to be the reason that stopped you. And it's not like you can get feedback on why someone rejected you for a position or why you weren't even interviewed in the first place. So you want there to be no reason why a company that's interested in you wouldn't contact you. Like it really sucks to say that, but I really think it's important to say and be realistic about, and hopefully one day this will no longer be a thing where people have to go through things like this. So thank you guys so much for watching. This was kind of fun. I actually haven't looked at this resume for so long, and I actually already edited it and have a newer version with like my current job kind of roles. So I really think that just keeping it updated is important. And like looking back at it, it's pretty interesting to look back, especially from like me who was 2 years ago. I was like 20 or 19, and just thinking about like what was going through my head while making this resume is kind of nostalgic to think about. I don't know. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and turn on post notifications if you want to see more videos like this. I post videos every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and Sundays at 12 p.m. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.